Hey everybody, welcome to Corruption Watch. This is a new series that we're going to do on a regular basis to talk about a few stories in the news. Obviously, what we are seeing from the Trump White House is unprecedented corruption. I believe the most corrupt administration in American history. And we're going to highlight a few stories every week, because if we don't end this corruption, the corruption really will be the end of us. So, first story that you may have seen just came out in the news. A judge has nullified Trump's settlement with the IRS on the basis that you basically can't settle a case with yourself. And what we saw is that the President of the United States, who obviously controls the federal government, including the Internal Revenue Service, tried to sue the federal government for $10 billion over a admitted breach of his tax records back from before he was President of the United States from a number of years ago by a contractor. That happened, and that person went to jail. Obviously, the whole thing has been litigated, and now Trump wanted $10 billion from the IRS. In addition to that, though, he wanted immunity from all audits for himself and for his company and for his family. The problem with that, of course, is that you cannot settle a lawsuit with yourself. Also problematic is that one of the people behind all of this was Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche, of course, who's trying to become the Attorney General of the United States. He's currently the acting Attorney General. He is pending Senate confirmation. I do not believe he should be confirmed. But what this judge said was that you can't settle a case with yourself, and she even went so far as to discipline Trump's attorney for even having the audacity to bring this case. Now, of course, part of the settlement that Trump entered into, again with his own IRS, was this $1.8 billion slush fund, which was designed for those who had been victimized by the federal government, including the January 6th insurrectionists who, in some cases, even assaulted police officers. That was a bridge too far for some Republican senators who pushed back. But evidently the audit immunity was perfectly fine with them. Well, it's not fine with me. The entire thing stinks. And I'm pleased to see that that judge ruled against the president, called this out for what it was, which is shameless self-dealing, deep corruption. And we'll have to see where this goes. Knowing President Trump, I'm sure he will try every legal avenue to keep not only the audit immunity alive, because according to public reporting, he could owe up to $100 million in back taxes for overstating losses from properties in years past. But I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to pick back up the weaponization fund, because that's what Trump does. He never relents. He's always on the attack. He never admits fault. He never admits when he loses. And that's why we're in a whole host of problems with this administration. So that's, story number one. Number two is something that I think should be deeply concerning to every American that cares about free and fair elections. And that's the fact that Trump has fired everybody on something called the Election Assistance Commission. Now, the EAC, as it's known, is a little bit obscure, but you can think of them as an impartial referee for our federal elections. And it was created in the wake of the 2000 election, which, as I'm sure many of you remember, was incredibly contested between George W. Bush and Vice President Al Gore. It came down to 538 votes in Florida and went on for over a month. And after that, it was agreed that there would be a nonpartisan referee, the Election Assistance Commission, that would help with the processes for the count and with the national voter registration. By firing basically the impartial referee, Trump now is able to get the outcome that he desires. At least he'll get closer to it, which, I've said all along, it's very clear that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election to President Biden. He lost the Electoral College. He lost the popular vote. He's never been willing to admit it, and he probably never will be willing to admit it. As a result, he sued 60 times. He lost virtually all of his lawsuits with regard to the 2020 election. But the man will never admit that he lost. And so even now, we see that he's alleging fraud that doesn't exist. And, he's basically right there with the MyPillow guy in terms of his beliefs around the 2020 election. But not having an impartial referee there who can push back on some of the more egregious things this president wants to do with regard to elections is deeply problematic. I am hoping that the American people can see through this. The American people will understand that Donald Trump has lied to them about many, many things, but perhaps no lie more obvious or more overwhelmingly refuted than the big lie about losing in 2020. So that's story number 2, not great. Story number 3 is with regard to what I call Qatar Force One. And that is, of course, this plane, this luxury jet that was gifted by the government of Qatar to the Air Force. It's roughly worth $400 million. And the idea is, Donald Trump has laid it out, as his sons have laid it out, is that Qatar gifts this plane to the United States, that the U.S., the Air Force, will retrofit the plane for security so that it can safely transport the president. And then after President Trump leaves office, he and his library, the Presidential Library Foundation, will take possession of the plane. Unclear whether the plane will be in the lobby of the Presidential Library there in Florida or whether Trump intends to continue to fly the plane while out of office. But here's what you need to know, a couple things. One is that the United States government, the taxpayer, has spent now well over $400 million. Some estimates are up to $1 billion on the security retrofit for Qatar Force One. In my view, because we, the American taxpayers, are spending money on that plane, it is our plane. It is no longer Donald Trump's plane. You can take issue, and goodness knows I have, with whether or not he should have accepted the plane in the first place. I see it as an impermissible gift under the Emoluments Clause, particularly since Trump has said that he wants the plane to go to his own Presidential Library Foundation after he leaves office. Compounding matters is that we already have, I'm on the Appropriations Committee, we already have appropriated funds, roughly $6 billion, for new Air Force Ones, two new planes from Boeing, set to be delivered just after Donald Trump leaves the presidency. Evidently, Trump isn't satisfied with the plane he currently has. He needs to have a new luxury jet with all the bells and whistles, and he's willing to take $400 million from Qatar in the form of that jet. I think we need a full accounting of how that money was spent on the retrofit, on which contractors benefited, on what process was followed, since Lord knows this president loves no-bid contracts on just about everything. And then we also need to understand why it was that this plane, after being retrofitted to the tune of hundreds of millions, as I said, up to $1 billion, still couldn't fly the president back from the NATO summit in Turkey. Why the U.S. Secret Service deemed that the plane was insufficiently secure even after the expense of several hundred million taxpayer dollars. Now, making matters worse is that journalists at the New York Times and elsewhere, they actually called this out. They said that the reason that Trump flew on the old Air Force One back from Turkey to the United States was because of security concerns about the new Qatar Force One. Trump lied about that too. He said, oh, he just wanted for people overseas to be able to see his shiny new plane. And we know that that's, of course, not true. So what happens to those New York Times journalists when they tell the truth, when they report the facts? Well, Trump has them subpoenaed. That should put a chill down everyone's spine. That in the United States of America, where we embrace the freedom of the press, where we want the facts reported without fear or favor, objectively as possible in our press, when you had journalists at the New York Times willing to stand up and speak out, they were then subpoenaed. So that begs the question, where does this go next? Where does this go next? Are journalists everywhere going to be fearful, going to be intimidated? I was speaking to journalists yesterday who are worried they're going to be subpoenaed because of their reporting on Donald Trump, because of their reporting on the corruption of this administration. Look, on appropriations, I'm going to demand a full accounting for how the taxpayer dollar was spent on retrofitting the plane, for a full understanding of why the plane was declared not secure enough to fly the president back from Turkey and the NATO summit. And I'm also going to demand that to the extent taxpayer dollars were used to retrofit the plane, that the plane remains the property of the United States government. At least all those upgrades are the property of the United States government, American taxpayers, not of Donald Trump. He doesn't get to walk away with this plane as a gift from the Qatari government. So it's a pattern, right? It's a pattern of foreign companies buying influence, whether it's Qatar with the plane, whether it's the UAE buying into World Liberty Financial to the tune of $500 million so they can get access to AI chips. There are other countries as well that are alleged to have done things to either enrich the president personally or to provide benefits to the president and his family that I believe violate the spirit and the letter of the Foreign Emoluments Clause. There are so many other corrupt things happening right now, and we'll be digging into them in the weeks and the months ahead. It gives me no pleasure whatsoever to wake up and have to opine on all the corrupt things this administration is doing. But I see this as a critical moment in our history where either we're going to speak out and we're going to hold this administration to account and we're going to document for the record all the corrupt acts, regardless of what the repercussions may be, or we're going to become numb to it all. We're going to become so desensitized to the corruption that none of it matters anymore. And guess what? That's exactly what they want. In fact, J.D. Vance said the quiet part out loud. When he was at the Nixon Library, he said that in his view, Watergate today would be a 12-hour story.
If Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. Like, the idea that it would have taken down a presidency is crazy.
We can't let him be right. And the way that we fight back and the way that we prevent that from becoming the new normal of the United States of America, this country that I love so much, this country that so many generations have fought and died for our freedoms and for our democratic institutions to be preserved and protected, is to speak up and to demand that our elected representatives speak up. So until next time, thanks for watching.